I can't tell you what pleasure it is for me to be able to go upstairs and just look at the Sargent. Oh, it's just, it's been. This, sadly, was in my close to 50 years as a member here, the most, Peggy said to me, I've never seen you so angry and so upset. When the news got out that the Sargent had to be sold, the dealers were here like vultures. It was one of the most depressing. The manager basically took me outside because he said, we're going to explode. And the line, we're saving the club for you. I said, oh, bullshit. Anyway, it had to be sold. I'll take some credit with my committee that we're able to save the other two. But let me talk about this a little bit. This painting, and I'll tell you what's funny, you're going to get a kick out of this. This painting had been here. This is the reproduction. It's a little pale, but not far off. It's exactly the scale. It was painted for this mantle, and the frame held the painting in. And when the painting was sold for $2.5 million, which you should have gotten a lot more, but it was right after. There's no point going back. It was the worst possible time. There's only a waterfront property, and the world goes to war. Well, the painting came off, and behind it is all marble, all the way up here. And it was just, had been, you know, the nails had gone in to hold the painting in and frame it. So I thought I better put something here. So I found another portrait, which is now in the dining room, of Mr. Booth as Hamlet. And it was not as big as this. And I put it up here, and Mr. Booth is like this, looking as Hamlet in the Danish garments. And one of the old members said to me when he looked at it, he said, oh, thank God they haven't sold the Sargent. It makes you feel really good, doesn't it? Now, one of the things I want to mention about the Sargent, which so struck me, it's lost the depth, but take the conception I was talking about, his height. That's the mantelpiece that's in the other room. So Sargent's taken liberties with this, but what I ask you to think about, you'll find within this clubhouse there are 20 different versions of Mr. Booth by different painters, and many we don't have. This is about the only one that's not in costume. He was a Shakespearean actor. And to me, I'm speaking very personally, I love this portrait. To me, it was as strong as a Velasquez. And you know, if you looked, I used to jokingly say about this, can you imagine what Mrs. Booth said when she saw it? Because Sargent's great line, a portrait is a painting of somebody with a little something wrong with the mouth. What about the eyes? But look at this is theatrical. I mean, that is, you know, there's a man who maybe it's not takes much to say because it's sort of fashionable to pull Sargent down and say he was superficial. This is a man whose younger brother assassinated the president. Now that is a brooding, reflective, handsome, and he's of the theater in his own way. And I thought that painting was marvelous, and just that little note, for instance, of the fireplace in the back. Now, it was much richer in the original. But he took that mantle. Mr. Booth went over it. Sargent was not as tall as Jamie, but maybe by today's standards he was. He was 6'4" in an age when men were. And so, again, the elongated figure, because that's a man of 6'4", and Booth was a full foot shorter than that. So we put that there. Now, the other portrait on the left, by the way, the one on the left, one of these two is the original frame that was designed by Stanford White for Sargent's painting, and the other is the replica which was copied from it. To this day I don't know which is which, but the one was copied from the other because we wanted them to match. Now that one on the left was an actor named Lawrence Barrett, and it's not the most dramatic Sargent, but it's so well thought out, and if you look at the cuff, you know there's starch in it. You just know it. Now, this is the portrait I want to focus on, because to me, this Sargent ranks with any France Halls ever painted. This was an actor named Joseph Jefferson. Joseph Jefferson was not only, these three men were, by the way, all what they call actor managers. It's something that doesn't exist anymore, where the actor actually is the manager of the troupe. And so Sargent painted these three within 2 years, and this one of Mr. Jefferson, who was a painter himself, but mainly an actor. And when we go into the other room, keep this one in mind, there's a portrait by John Alexander of Mr. Jefferson standing in the footlights, which I'd love to see. It's with the light from underneath, and it's my favorite painting in the club. But anyway, I was here with a class about 40 years ago from the Art Students League, and one of the kids said to me, Jesus, Mr. Kinstler, that dome looks so like an egg. No, good point. Mr. Jefferson had a shock of hair that began here and went out like that. For this part, he wore a rubber pate here with that puffiness. Now, Sargent has made no attempt to make it look flesh-colored.
Right.
So if you look at it, you say, well, that forehead looks a little bizarre, and it's out of, the color's kind of gray and blue. Once you know that this was a Now, when I talk about France Halls, this to me is as brilliant as any, and it's just that gesture, and that simplicity. And that head is, to me, Jamie, as solid as, I mean, it is just absolutely knockout. You know, you talk about, one of the things we talk about a great deal when I teach is highlights. There's no such thing as a highlight, that's a light plane. Highlights are things like the eyeglasses, the light in the eye, but basically that solidity of that head is like a Velasquez. This, you can't see very well, is a Gilbert Stuart.
Yeah, I thought so.
Just to give you an idea of what the collection is, that's a Gilbert Stuart. And so this room has been aptly called the Sargent Room, and over there